playing the scales, what you're trying to do as far as getting the tone just right? Is there things you're thinking about?
No, I'm not thinking about anything. See,
So
that's the
when
whole
you're learning, when
point.
you're
How much
learning-
do you think about each word when you?
No, not a lot.
How do you think about the way your mouth's moving?
Not a lot, no.
Same
So
thing.
same, even when you're starting and you're just trying to find the right way to push the note in.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's technical things to do. We can talk about hands, there's hand efficiency. I mean, you know, fortunately, we don't have to go through that process when we're learning how to talk as little kids, you know, everything just seems to kind of work, you know. But having an external thing that's not a part of us physically, you know, is part of the issue. But we want to get it to be as much like that as we can. So, you know, thinking about how your hands operate on the instrument is very, very important. You know, what I start with first is height of the instrument, you know, basically having the instrument sitting on your stomach puts it in proportional balance to each arm's length. And everybody makes their own calls on what they want to, you know, how they want to hold the instrument, you know. Generally, you see a lot of people play with the instrument really low, but that's not really good for your left hand. You know, and you say, well, man, I saw this band, this guy played down here and he was fine, he sounded great. Well, you learn to play that way, you know, but there's going to be things that he's going to run into that if you made another decision, you wouldn't have those problems, you know. Now, he may be lucky and not have problems. You know, you can't totally say it's absolutely one way or the other, you know. But, you know, generally speaking, having the body of the instrument sitting on your stomach will put it in a proportional balance where it's not too low for the left, not too high for the right. But a really huge thing about physicality is that you should always practice the way you're going to play. You know, whatever decision you make, you know, always do it the same way, because I'll see people like spend hours and hours like this, you know, and they're smoking, right? Then they go to play and the bass swings completely around to a different position. Now I'm thinking, well, you know, it's not a deal breaker, but it seems like you're sending conflicting information to your muscle memory.
Yeah.
You know, like how many people do sports? I mean, you know, you don't, if you're practicing hitting a baseball, right? You don't practice swinging from behind, you know. You know, you practice the way you're actually going to play.
So then you probably, even if you're sitting down like yourself right now, you probably use a strap every time.
I always have a strap when I'm practicing, always. The only time I don't use a strap is when I teach just to get my bass quickly, but I'll sit in a way to where it's pretty close, you know, but it just saves some time. But for example, if you have like a low chair, like something like this, then I might, you know, do something like, kind of weird, but it works. You know, I mean, I want to keep the
mechanically as you.
practice the way you're going to play. Any other way, and you're sending conflicting information to your muscle memory. I mean, it just makes sense, right? And will slow down technical development. It won't kill it, but you know, it's not going to speed things up. So the way to check it is, you know, if you're sitting down, you know, stand up, sit down. If it doesn't move, you're there.
I was telling Ray today about what you taught me, play right behind the fret is the best tone, right?
Well, you're going to get the best leverage over the, you know, you're stopping the vibration on top of that piece of metal, right? You're going to get the best leverage directly behind it. The further you go back, the less pressure is going over the top of that piece of metal. So, you know, the chance of buzzing is going to be bigger, right? Now, getting into right and left hand stuff, I've gotten to where, you know, working from the most relaxed position is the way to go. You know, in fact, about 3 years ago, I decided to completely change my right hand. It took me 1.5 years to get back after doing 30 years the other way. Painful process, but it was worth it, you know. And I knew about it for a long time, but I was always thinking to myself, well, man, you know, I can't sound bad on the gig. You know, I always came up with excuses not to do it. And finally realized, well, you know, there's never going to be a good time for this at this point. So either do it or shut up, you know. So it came down to that, so I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And so I went to guys and bands, said, look, guys, it might be a little rough here for a minute, but, you know, I'm changing some stuff around, you know. But it was worth it in the end. So if somebody were to say, okay, what's your right hand technique? That's it. The most relaxed position for my hand. My hand always operates from my most relaxed position. And I also use something called the floating thumb, which took care of all my muting problems using the 2-finger picking technique. Right, so when I'm playing on my B string, my hand doesn't move or function any differently than it does on the C. Plus, I'm keeping the lower strings quiet while I'm playing on the higher ones by having the thumb lay flat across the strings as I go up. You know, because as soon as you start doing this, you're using all this hand energy just to hold your hand out. I mean, hold your hand out there for about 10 minutes like that. See how it feels. And, you know, get an idea of that you're really using all that muscle energy just for that. To where actually operating from the most relaxed position really makes the most sense. Right?
So when you're playing, is there kind of a learning curve on how to teach your thumb how to mute the strings?
Well, the way to play good fast anything is to practice good slow. And then get it the way you want it and speed it up. Any other way, and you're going to run into issues where you're going to have to go back and clean something up.
Yeah.
Right? So you always want to practice just below the point of collapse. And by that I mean to where it's just below the point of where you would lose control if you went any faster. All right, so what I do is I just, you know, let's say take 4 notes per string, right? And so I rest my thumb on top of the pickup as opposed to on the cliff here, right? Because I want to reduce the amount of motion getting from here to here. Right, when I pick the strings, I want my finger just to glide over the top of the string, grip it, keep tension in these 2 joints here, because this is where you're going to get your power. Right? In other words, if this were the string, and I let my finger buckle backwards as it goes over the string, all the energy of that pull is dissipating out of the joint. Right? As opposed to keeping that finger tense and letting the string slide out from underneath the finger. You get a lot more power with less effort that way. And just unless you want this kind of sound for something, you know, which is fine. You know, basically just letting the finger glide over the top of the string, grip it, and pull it is all that's required. Right, when I go to my E string, my thumb just slides up on the B. When I go to the A, now my thumb's resting on the E and the B. When I go to D, A, picking the D, I'm sitting on the bottom 3, B, E, and A. So when I'm playing on my C, again, my right hand's not operating any differently. It's all the same thing. Now again, I'm keeping my arm off the bass, you know, and it takes a little, you know, your shoulder takes a minute to get used to this, but, you know, the freedom of movement that you have here is really great.
That's a good point too, because then you have the option of your dynamics there. Because then if you're, like you said, if you're doing that and your fingers buckling like that and you're playing as hard as you can't get any louder if you
Right.
need to.
You have much wider dynamic range. Because if I'm playing this note here and letting my fingers buckle backwards, I'm pulling hard there. But I'm letting my fingers completely collapse as they go back, as they go over the string. Now if I tighten up those joints, listen to the difference. So you have twice the power. Yeah. Now the left hand, same thing. What's your left hand technique? Well, there it is. Right? Just flip it over. Slide the bass in there, and that's it. You see the wrist is more or less straight. Notice that the thumb kind of points towards the headstock. It's not like this. This is really not a good idea to do, because once you do this, you can feel your whole arm. I feel my whole arm tighten up through here. But in the most relaxed position for my hand, right? Now when I'm playing on the lower positions of the bass, you'll notice that we have these, you know, frets kind of far apart here, right? The last thing you really want to do is play like this, because again, you're using all this hand energy just to do that. Right now, there are situations where you are going to have to reach to notes, but I feel like your default position should always be the most relaxed place. So if I were playing a 1, 2, 3, 4 fingering, have my first finger there, right? 2, 3, and 4 floating there. When I go to 2, 1 pulls up behind it, go to 3, go to 4. My hand's always operating in a very relaxed position. There's a point where I'll start to reach more because I have to get to those notes cleanly. But my thumb in the back, I move like that up to a certain point. Then I use what I call a spring action to where, let's say if I'm starting here, I might let this tension that this creates kind of almost act like a spring that kind of throws my hand back to the relaxed position. Everybody see that? But I don't actually stay there. I always like to stay like this because that's where my hand feels the most relaxed. So operating from a very relaxed place is always going to, it just makes sense, you know. If you're not used to it and you're going to be changing your hand stuff from what you've been playing with, you know, man, get ready. It's not going to be pleasant. You know, but the rewards are worth it.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that too, because like playing cello, you're taught that your hand needs to be, you have to have that tension where you're talking about where it's straight.
Mhm.
It is bad as far as for your muscles and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But I'm glad you said that, because I wouldn't have known, and I would have tried to incorporate what I've learned on cello on that, and it would have been right.
Well, I can't speak to the cello not having played the instrument. There may be reasons to do, you know, those guys have been playing, that instrument's been around a long time, so I have to believe that those guys have figured it out, you know. But, you know, I mean, there was 20 years I thought you were supposed to play like this.
Right, right.
You know, I swear, no, this is the way, you know, but then once I did it, I said, man, if I'd done this 30 years ago,
Six,
you
seven,
know.
five.
Carpal tunnel.